Hi, and welcome back to the Spirit Lounge. I hope you guys are doing well, and we're back onto the passage of the Upanisads. Today we're going to go through the Paingala Upanisad. Again, it's another shorter chapter, and we'll get straight onto this and move this onto the screen there. Okay, so the Paingala Upanishad, again, the Upanisad's 1200-400 BCE, hence the nature of how it's written and the way that it uses aspects of self, environment, world, nature, and the cosmos to explain the absorption of knowledge. Okay, and the Paingala Upanishad again is associated with the Yajur Vea. It's a dialogue between Yjnavalkya, which is again a sage that shows up in many of these. At least 3 of the Upanisads have this individual person, sage, and one of his pupils, Paingala. Hence the Paingala Upanishad, which is a conversation with this ascetic Yjnavalkya, which is many of these. There's about at least 3 or 4 of the Upanisads have this particular ascetic seer as sage in it. Okay, Paingala asked, after duly serving him for 12 years, so he stayed in the service of Yjnavalkya for 12 years. He says, "Do tell us about the great secret of aloneness, i.e., the reclusiveness of things." And we talk about this a lot. How to do things in the ascetic, reclusive ascetic, going into the forest or a cave and away from the world to find grace, to understand grace. And Yjnavalkya replied, "At the beginning, all this was being alone. That is Brahman, the ever-free indeterminate of the nature of truth, knowledge, and bliss, ever full, nascent or eternal, without a second, ancient or eternal, one without a second. The witness of self. The pure Brahma becomes a witnessing consciousness, the eternal subject faced by the principle of all objectivity. The pure spirit develops into the subject and object relationship, so we develop into it from our we are the in the spirit is the subject, and we are objectifying it and going towards it. The mula prakriti, which is the root substance, and prakriti being the root force, the root principle of matter. It cannot of its own develop. Matter by itself cannot give rise to life or mind, and etc. So the principle of consciousness is positive. So it's saying here that matter itself, the body by itself, the nature of the subject and object, which is the nature of our individual objectified and subjectified selves, cannot, the nature, root substance, i.e. the Narayana, divine principle of what we are as beings, cannot give rise to life itself. So this is what posits them in the mind of the ascetic, that there must be a principle of consciousness beyond it, which is what this is saying. Owing to the root principle evolves in detailed forms. All forms have this principle. So all forms have this root principle, this material Prakriti principle and Narayana principle. So they must all have a nature of infinite life within them, something positive that brings a greater consciousness within them. Ishvara. When that Prakriti undergoes change, i.e. starts to manifest, it becomes known as the unmanifested and has the power of veiling the nature of Brahman, which is the creative force. It becomes the Ishvara consciousness, the transformative or the preservative force. Has Maya under his control in preservative force. So there's Brahma, Ishvara, and Shiva, remember. Under his control, he is all-knowing and the first cause of creation, substance and dissolution of the world. That causes the entire world resting in it to become manifest. On account of the previous deeds of the souls, this unfurls. This is interesting. So basically it's saying that the divine absolute, the grace through the darkness and the secret aloneness manifested through itself, through the void of determination, probability and possibility, manifestation, creation. In this way they've created gods towards it, which is the Prakriti, which is then or the Niranya Garbha, which is the golden germ. But the 3 divine forces of Brahma, Ishvara and Shiva, the creation, preservation and transformative forces, it creates what is manifest in the world, but also on account of previous deeds of the souls, this unfurls. What does this mean? This means that Everything is conscious and has karmic energy. Karma evolves the nature in which things are manifest, the nature in which things are experienced and perceived. How this world, how the things manifest around us in our physical world that we experience is a collective karmic experience. Our individual world experience is an individual karmic experience. What is karmic? Well, it's just an expression of our perception, isn't it? It's a perception of, it's a cause and effect of our state of consciousness. It's a cause and a self, our state of a perception. It's a cause and effect of our state of attachment to material, desire-driven, egotistic, self-righteous, self-virtuous, goodness things. It's also a cause and effect of our movement towards our soul, towards our spirit, or not. So that is what karmic is. These are actions, words, and thoughts determined by our karmic or conscious state. This develops karmic action, cause and effect, which are karmas attaching to us. We attach to us that which we give out. This is what karma is. And that's always unfounded by, what is that? The state of our perception consciousness, the state of our awareness, our food, our knowledge, our knowledge of either ego, mind, or divine knowledge. So that's what karma is. We change karmic, and we change the way this universe or our self-world, our worldview, our own experience unfurls through our karma. What is karma? Attached to our perceptions, our divine consciousness, the infinite growth of it or not. So it all founds on our divine principle, doesn't it? Are we going towards a divine principle? Are we not? This is what dictates and defines and drives our actions, words, thoughts, and intentions, which in turn has a cause and effect, which we call karma. This is our attachment to the world, or our detachment from the world, our attachment to desires of the matter, or the Yjna Prakriti principle, or not. So these are the two realms of choice that we make. And this is how the world unfolds. Our universe unfolds. It's all connected. Our individual karmic connections to the universe, to everything else that has karmic connections, unfolds the universe. It draws down into this myopic, or the pinprick of the world. The human experience is a pinprick of the infinite cosmos. And then we are, again, a tiny pinprick of the world cosmos. We are a microcosm of a macrocosm, and even our microcosm is a pinprick of just of a greater macrocosm. So we must evolve to unfold the world in a much more divine, or what we call karmic way. And as it goes on, with the destruction of the deeds of the souls causes the world to disappear, in that alone remains the entire universe. So when everything in that is manifest evolves, i.e. perceptions grows and it evolves, then the world no longer has purpose. But as I said, those of darkness will, what I see is eventually those who are wanting and willing to will, over the infinites of all that is, ultimately evolve back into the divine grace. But we'll be left here with those who remain, have attached and given themselves to darkness and will remain there. They will end up devouring themselves. This world will be a devouring of the dark ones. Those who dwell here, I call them, because their consciousness is pinned here, and maybe for an eternity will devour themselves, because all else is devolved out. So this is their hell, the devouring of themselves. That time is coming. It's a long, long way away in the linear time, but it is coming. Hiranyagarbha, so this is the creative force, dwelling in Ishvara, the Lord of creation. There comes into being the power of projection. What is reflected in it becomes the Hiranyagarbha consciousness. This is what I'm saying, the divine through thought and intention projected. Let there be consciousness. This is where the Bible says let there be life. This is expressed in the deities of Hiranyagarbha, Bhaktri, and so forth. What is reflected in it becomes Hiranyagarbha consciousness, the creative force from the darkness of the all. Has its form manifested both distinctly and indistinctly, i.e. that is manifest, unmanifest, that is which is seen and observed and experienced, that is what is not seen and observed and experienced. So Virat, From the power of projection dwelling in Hiranyagarbha, there comes into being the power of making gross bodies, known as the self-sense, which is what Virat is. Self-sells on it as its own, becomes the chief person, Vishnu, the sustainer of all gross creation. From that, Virat, so Vishnu is not Visva, Visva is the creation, is the creative force on the Prakriti, but Vishnu, Brahma and Siva are the three forces of preservation, of creation, Brahma, preservation, Vishnu, Siva being the destroyer, transformation force. It kind of confuses me sometimes. Gross creation from the Virat, self ether organizes. So ether being the force. Air, and from air it comes fire, fire comes water, water, earth. These five subtle elements becomes the three qualities of sattva, which is purity, rajas, which is activity, and tamas is darkness, laziness, and so forth. You can see how it's all abstracted out. The Upanisads did the same thing. Creation. He, the creator of the world, desirous of creating, embracing the quality of tamas. Tamas being, again, where was it here? Sorry, I've lost it. Okay, I've lost my place here again. The five sheaths. I don't know where we are. Okay, we're on 6, weren't we? Okay. Yeah, here we go. So tamas being darkness. So creation. He, the creator of the world, desirous of creating, embracing the quality of tamas, the darkness. Desire to change the subtle elements into gross ones, i.e. energy, intention and thought, into gross, which is matter form. Created many crores, i.e. crores is a number or a numerical aspect in Hindi. Crores is 10 million or 100. It has many. It's what crores are. Of Brahmadas, which is a macrocosm. So they created many forms in a macrocosm. Dividing the mobile property, he created the organs of action. So he created many Brahmadas, which is forms, creatures, us, in a macrocosm, and divided them into many organs of action. Dividing the rhythmic properties, he created the organs of perception. So the mobile properties, in other words, things that move, he created the mobile organs of actions, i.e. the feet, the hands, things like that. The rhythmic properties, he created the organs of perceptions, i.e. the eyes, the ears, and so forth. Out of the totality of rhythm, he created the organs of sense. There being inessential organs. Then he cast them into the microcosm. The Virat, possessed of the self or sense, protected the gross elements. Under his orders, Hiranyagarbha ruled over the subtle elements, i.e. that was in the universe. He desired to make them all conscious. So this is again another being. First it was Prakriti, now it's Hiranyagarbha, which was the layer, which is the deity of manifesting Prakriti. Then decided to make all these beings that had rhythmic mobility and self-sense, which he desired to make them all conscious, i.e. the divine spark, sentient, piercing through the microcosm and the caverns of the cranium of the individual souls, situated in their crests, he entered them all. In other words, he threw the divine spark through the crest of the body into the and make the body sentient by having a divine spirit in it. This is effectively what this is saying. And getting deluded by it, attained the state of individual soul, the soul expression, by identifying with the three bodies, gross, subtle, and causal. He attained the state of the doer, enjoyer, and performer. He twirls round and round as if dead through alive. So this basically means that the individual soul then started to become aware of itself, and through this confusion and the gross, subtle, and causal bodies, twirls around in elation of itself. Okay, Ishvara and the individual soul. How does the Lord all-pervading attain the state of the individual soul, is questioned. The gross body, I shall relate the character of the individual soul and the divine in distinction from each other. The origin of the gross, subtle and causal bodies. The Lord, after getting together the minute parts, great elements, created in order gross bodies, i.e. physical matter beings, individual and collective aspects of skull, skin, intestines, bones, flesh, of water, hunger, thirst, sex, of fire, lust and anger, of ether. The combination of these becomes the gross body. So the gross body is a combination of all these material environmental aspects. The subtle body, then out of these three parts, the mobile, remember the mobile character, the sensory character, and the I forget the one at the one before that. This was the rhythmic character. Created the 5 breaths, and then the heart, the navel, the throat, the rhythmic character. He created the inner sense, the mind and understanding, determination, conviction, memory and love. So all of these other subtle aspects of us were formed. And then the 5 sheets. The 5 sheets were made of food, air, mind, understanding and bliss. These are levels and movements of knowledge as well. So through movements of knowledge we understand the ether, we understand intellectual, we start to grow, we start to understand understanding, and we have bliss through elevation, enlightenment. Into being by the sense essence of food, earth full of the essence of food, with the organ of action constitute the sheath, mind is the sheath, perception is the sheath, intelligence is the sheath. So these are different sheaths through which we pass through. As I said, through knowledge we pass through food, food being knowledge. Through air we understand the ether, something greater. Through the mind we start to contemplate and awareness grows. We start growing greater understanding of understanding, and through bliss is enlightened, advanced knowing and moksha. So these are the sheaths. Okay, waking and dream states. The state of waking consists in the knowledge acquired through the perceptions of mind. So we go through waking, dream and dreamlessness, sleep. The organs of perception, the expanded, has established himself in the middle of the eyebrows and the third eye. On reaching another world, the expanded consciousness, leading to the entry into another body, in other words, our spiritual body. Sense organ has come to rest, so our attachments and physical outer self calms, allowing our inner selves to emerge. A cessation of active functioning such as we have in the waking state. The sleep state. The sleep state is that in which that which only thought functions until we go into deeper contemplative states, in other words, meditative states. This is the dream state, the sleep state. Even so, the individual soul, tired of functioning in the worlds of waking and dream, enjoys his own bliss. Death. What is different from waking, dreaming, sleeping and fainting states? What instills fear into the heart? Causes the giving up of the gross body. That is the state of dying. The desire for liberation arises in human beings at the end of many births through the ripening of their past virtuous acts, in other words, enlightenment. Bondage and release. Bondage produced by the lack of investigation becomes release by proper investigation. In other words, those who have moved their soul to indifference, to detachment, through the dismissal of the all, of just the nature of spirit at all. This is where bondage comes in. Moving towards enlightenment, we get proper through investigation, i.e. an unveiling of knowledge, an unveiling of our spiritual selves. The person within is the release. One should always inquire into the nature of the world, the individual and the supreme self. So this is the nature of our reality, the nature of our supreme self, our soul self and our inner self, our divine person, and then the supreme absolute, which is the divine grace, which we're trying to re-merge into. Okay, meditation and the highest enlightenment. So this is how it's saying we do it. Always meditation, contemplation, remember. It's always the single message. There's many messages, but this is the passage from which all of the scriptures really say we need to move forward. One should engage in meditation of the kind, thou art thou. i.e. we are the all. I am Brahman, giving up the power of Maya, i.e. the power of will and action, and ignorance which envelop the two, the supreme and the individual soul. What is meant by the terms thou art thou becomes Brahman. I am Brahman is hearing, the thought absorbed only in the sub-object meditated upon. The functionings directed towards the cognition of the self are roused, i.e. raised, awakened. Previous karmas accumulated during this beginningless cycle of births and deaths attain their dissolution. This is what I'm saying. We start to only develop a divine karmic cycle because we're moving away from attachment and physical, which is creating attachment-determined karmas, or attachments, in other words. Through the power of practice in yoga, call thus highest enlightenment the cloud of virtue. Paingala asked again, what is the nature of action of a knower? And Sakyala replied, the seeker after liberation endowed with humility and good qualities carries safely across the ocean of worldly existence. The moment he becomes a knower of Brahma, he carries across 101 generations of his class, i.e. himself. The self associated with this is incarnations, the many, many incarnated lives, that's what I read into that. The self associated with the body, the senses, the mind, the great sages declare is the enjoyer. Narayana, which is Vishnu, the Supreme Being, is actually established as the self, the seeker after God. Becoming one with God becomes the self of all beings. As long as previously commenced karma remains unspent, i.e. we don't resolve, he who attained liberation though possessed of body, wanders about homeless, like the moon on the sky. Casting off his body either in a place of pilgrimage or in a house of a knower attains aloneness. So this is basically saying that aloneness effectively is... this is saying you go to a place to be alone, to have that meditative silence and tranquility. Well, you don't actually need to do any of that. This is what was prescribed in the time this was written, where spiritual enlightenment was gained by disappearing from the world and going off into an ascetic life. Now it's done by going into monasteries or any such thing like such as that. But we don't need to do that. We can do that by going into inner church and spending as much time in our private and personal lives to be silent, to be alone with ourselves, to be alone and allow the divine grace to enter, to spend time on your individual personal journey to grace. We don't give time to that. We always spend our time too busy being busy and filling it with meaningless, non-transcendental things. There are certain things we have to do in this physical world, but how much of our time do we spend doing nonsensical things or spending our time flicking through Facebook or Instagram when we could be spending that to more transcendental aspects of ourselves? It's chasing desire-driven things that we may not need to. It's a choice. Okay, with the purified mind, with a purified consciousness full of forbearance, and in the attitude I am he, full of forbearance, and when he gains the attitude I am he, when the Supreme Self, the basis of all knowledge, gets firmly fixed in the heart, when the body attains the status of quiescence, silence, contentment, peace, harmony, then does the mind with intellect become void of its functionings, i.e. physical self. The state of liberation is suggested to be oneness with the absolute self. I mean, that pretty much explains itself there. When the body is lit with the flame of knowledge, when the understanding becomes indivisible in the form, the knower should burn all the bonds with the fire of the knowledge of Brahman, i.e. burn bonds through ritual, express the release, but through rituals also, through throwing up oblations into the fire as aspects of the desire, aspects of the material self, aspects of attachment, throwing into the fire in the ritual as a ritual of release, in other words. This is what a lot of these rituals and practices are for. Without limitations should enter on the state hallowed as the Supreme Lord, non-dual form. That resembles ether devoid of impurities, like water that has flown into water. Purity flowing into purity, which is what water flowing into water is trying to say. The self that has a subtle body like the ether is not seen like the air, motionless both outside and inside. This is where we're connected closer and closer to our divine selves over this infinite passage. Becomes merged with Brahman, become more tranquil and silent within ourselves. We need less people around us. We need less material things. We are attached with less material things. We are distracted less with the material physical world. We become unattached to many things. This is our passage of becoming motionless inside and outside. For the great soul, want to liberation is the conviction that I am Brahman, i.e. just accepting that we are expressions of the divine absolute itself. What leads to bondage, what leads to liberation are the sense of mindness and the absence of the sense of mindness. So what is mindness? So selfishness, or looking upon the body and the world as one's own as means to one's enjoyment, causes bondage. The sense of mindness, the soul is bound. So when we have the mindness being the sense that we are the body, we are the world only, is mindness. The rises to the state of illumination is the sense of duality is never attained. There is the transcendent Brahman well established everywhere. So mindness is where we are connecting with the physical, in other words. Again, that's the end of that chapter. I thank you for listening. Again, becoming yourself, becoming this and practicing it as being you is what this is trying to say. The old cascade, the same message, remember. Become, the absolute can only become by being what it is that you seek to become. Ritual is one thing, if it resonates, but absorbing knowledge from within to without, remember, it comes from within without. It's your internal Churchill, always has been, always will be. This final stone on your passage across to the shore to light is always going to be on your own stone. You'll pass through many and jump on many as needed for you on this passage, and they may pass through many faiths, many religions, many scriptures, many teachers, many gurus, rabbis, priests, popes, and so on. But at the end, the church will always be your own. This is the one that tried to go into earlier in parallel with the other things, because at the end you'll stand on that alone, and that will be your passage to integration into the void of grace, because that's what it is, and a way out of this universal realm, which is what we're here to do. We're not here to fix ourselves here through attachment, which is what karmas are, and I explained in this video and the previous one. We had to move away from it. Allow grace to enter by knowing you know nothing, by knowing that you are awaiting to be involved. We are not self-righteous, self-virtuous, and the goodness of ego we see in the mirror, which is a reflection of that ego. We must all fall away, and we must be like children, innocent and waiting to let the grace within to shine out. This is how you'll move forward in the infinite book that I've described many, many times. The pages will turn, pages will turn. That's knowledge. It's energetic flowing into you and expressing outwardly. This is why the force of, we think divine is coming in for us outward. It's not. It's expressing from inward to outward through our senses. So therefore we think through our external selves it's coming from outward. It's not. It's coming from in to out, from within to without. Remember, inward, outward, silence and motionless. So I'll say thank you for listening to this. I appreciate it. Cascade it to others who would benefit. Again, we're coming to the end of the Upanishads. I have, I think, another 4 that I've already written and I've already prepared, and I'm going to try to do as many as I can today and some final ones tomorrow. And I'll summarize as much as I can the entire Upanisads in one video. And you might think this is a feat in itself. It is. But the reality is, like the Nagamadi summary that I did, the messages are very the same. This is what my channel is all about. It's to teach what they're saying. Secondly, to remind everyone that they're not different, that they're the same no matter what age or epoch they were written in. They're telling us the same thing in different ways. They're asking us to do the same thing in different ways. They all ask us to go to the other shore. And for me, the message is always, we're here to go back to grace because we're in this realm, because we've lost our way from grace. And these scriptures are a way of getting to that. They are not the only way, they are a way. We absorb understanding and knowledge through everything, through written scripture and through the evolving knowledge from within. It's all. And if you wish to do rituals, prayers, meditation, quiet contemplation, some ascetic components of your life, some reclusiveness, going in within self, spending more time into our transcendental nature's activities rather than non-transcendental activities in life, whatever resonates with you. It doesn't matter. Nothing is wrong and nothing is right. It's what resonates with you is right in your own individual passage. Do whatever works for you, but always remember to keep on moving. Don't stay on a single stone, and it will never done in one lifetime. Remember this. You'll have many, and you'll know when you're passing through them. You'll know when you're coming towards your end. You'll know intrinsically because you'll be giving this sign, you'll be giving this message. And you'll know because you'll be on the stone of your internal church. This is the one that the Christ and Krishna consciousness has always been telling us to go to. And as Christ was saying, you will reach God through him. What does that mean? It's through the Christ consciousness of yourself. Through emitting what he represented, his message represented to you, is how you pass on. But the Krishna message is the same. Your dharma, what is your purpose? Follow your purpose. Right? Your purpose is to go towards grace. Ultimately, that is the all. There's only one all. All other demigods and deities are created by us. So I want to say thank you again. I'm going to start the next video straight after this, and I want to say thank you for listening to this, and do pass on to others who benefit. I'm really looking forward to going on to the Apocryphs and the Bible, and after this I'm going to be looking for the book that I'm chasing, which I'm going to do straight after this. There's going to be another series on the 3 of those. And look forward to that, but I'm going to be finishing the Upanisads today and tomorrow. So look forward to the summary video, and I'll say thanks again for listening. God bless to you all, and thank you for your time. God bless until next time. Thank you.